They were the perfect family, or so it seemed. But behind the laughter and love, a storm was brewing, and when the truth came out, it tore everything apart. Nestled on the rolling hills of rural Vermont, the Reynolds family seemed to live a storybook life. Their home was perched at the edge of a forest, with sunlight pouring through oversized windows and flower beds bursting with seasonal color. Laughter often echoed from their back patio where they'd share meals, stories, and plans of the future. Welcome to Family Crime Chronicles, your ultimate destination for chilling true crime stories. We uncover the darkest corners of real-life mysteries, twisted affairs. Please comment, and subscribe now for new episode of True Crime Stories. Miranda Reynolds, 46, was at the heart of it all. A self-made entrepreneur, Miranda had built a thriving catering company from scratch. She was known in the community for her drive, her savory pies, and her warm, commanding presence. But she never worked alone. Her 3 younger cousins, Nina, Brooke, and Talia, had grown up in and out of her home, and when Miranda launched her business, she brought them into it. The 4 women ran a well-oiled operation that was as much family as it was business. They all lived together under one roof, an arrangement that worked, at least on the surface. Miranda's husband, George, was a steady presence, a high school principal who exuded calm and reason. Their son, Ethan, was 20 and away at university most of the year. But when home, he added an unmistakable lightness to the house. From the outside looking in, the Reynolds household was solid, respected, a rare example of how extended families could thrive under one roof. But what the community didn't see, what even Miranda and George didn't see, was a slow erosion of boundaries within that home, a fracture that began quietly and ended in devastating betrayal. In early spring, the family was invited to a week-long reunion in Colorado, a celebration of Miranda's parents' 50th wedding anniversary. Everyone was expected to attend. Everyone except Ethan. With final exams approaching, he made the reluctant decision to stay behind. George, ever the reasonable father, had reassured Miranda, "George, let the boy stay. He's mature enough. Plus, your cousins will still be around." It was a decision made without fanfare. Practical, safe. Nina, Brooke, and Talia also opted to stay back, citing catering orders and business obligations. It was a familiar setup. They'd all shared that house for years. But this time, something was different. The first few days were quiet. Ethan kept to himself, dividing his time between textbooks, workouts, and video calls with classmates. The cousins gave him space, appearing supportive, even friendly. But then small things shifted. Talia, the youngest of the 3 cousins, began appearing more frequently. She'd knock on his door late in the evening, asking innocuous questions about homework, about his classes, about music. She'd sit on his bed, uninvited. Brooke, the culinary mastermind of the business, began making elaborate dinners, far beyond what Ethan was used to. She'd invite him down, sit close, laugh a little too hard. And Nina, the quietest of the trio, would brush past him in hallways, each time letting her hand linger on his back, his shoulder, his chest. At first, Ethan chalked it up to awkwardness. Maybe they were just being friendly. Maybe he was reading into things. But day by day, the energy in the house shifted from supportive to suffocating. It happened the night he finished his last exam. Ethan had returned from the campus library, exhausted but relieved. As he stepped into the house, he was greeted by soft music, string lights, and a homemade banner draped across the living room. "Congratulations, Ethan." Takeout boxes, wine bottles, and celebratory desserts covered the table. Brooke poured the first glass. Talia handed him a slice of cake. Nina smiled from the corner. "Talia, just 1 glass. You've earned it." 1 glass turned into 2, then 4. Ethan's memories from that night are fractured. Flashes, smiles that felt too intimate, questions that sounded like dares, fingers on his skin, whispers too close to his ear. He woke up on the couch the next morning disoriented. His shirt was inside out, his phone missing, and something darker gnawed at the edges of his mind. He tried to shake it off until he found the USB. 2 days later, Nina approached him with a small object in hand, a USB drive. "Nina, relax. It's just for us. A memory." Ethan plugged it into his laptop that night, and what he saw made his stomach twist. Footage of that night, of him, clearly intoxicated, of his cousins surrounding him, touching him, whispering. He confronted Nina the next day. "Ethan, delete it. Now." But she didn't. Instead, the manipulation began. Words like, "You didn't stop us," and "you look like you were enjoying it," were weaponized. They told him he'd ruin the family if he said anything, that it was just a drunken mistake. Ethan began retreating into himself. He stopped going outside. He stopped eating meals with them. When George and Miranda returned home, he said nothing, because what could he say? Secrets, no matter how tightly held, eventually slipped through the cracks. Late one night, George was cleaning up the living room when he noticed a USB on the floor, partially tucked under a chair leg. Curious, he inserted it into his laptop. What he saw broke him. His son disoriented. His wife's cousins laughing, touching, filming. George didn't call out. He didn't wake Miranda. He just sat there, paralyzed by what he'd seen. When the screen finally went dark, George stood, walked to the guest house behind their home, and stayed there the rest of the night, planning. The next morning, George sent a message to Nina, Brooke, and Talia. He was throwing a brunch celebration for their hard work while the rest of the family was away. They arrived mid-morning, dressed casually, laughing, clueless. George welcomed them inside the guest house with coffee and a smile. Then, without a word, he turned on the flat screen. The video began playing. Silence. Brooke stammered first. "Brooke, what is this?" Talia looked away. "Talia, we were drunk." Nina, cold and calculated, whispered. "Nina, he didn't say no." George said nothing. He reached into his coat, pulled out an envelope, and placed it on the table. Inside, a copy of the video, a printed confession, and a legal notice. "George, I filed charges with the sheriff's office this morning. The police will be here in 15 minutes. You have until then to choose who you want to be when they arrive." He stood and left the guest house, locking the door behind him. The aftermath was a slow unraveling. Nina, Brooke, and Talia were arrested and charged with unlawful coercion, exploitation, and possession of illegal recordings. Ethan gave a statement through tears. George testified with a steady voice. Miranda, devastated and enraged, shut down the catering business. She packed up the family's belongings and moved them to a small lakeside town in upstate New York. Ethan took a leave of absence from university, but over time, with therapy and support, he began to find his footing again. The healing wasn't linear. It came in starts and stops, setbacks and small victories. But he was no longer silent. He was no longer alone. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from those who swore to protect you. And when the truth finally comes out, it has the power to either destroy you or set you free. For Ethan Reynolds, the truth shattered everything he thought he knew. But in that destruction, a new beginning took root. A family rebuilt not on blood, but on honesty, courage, and healing. Please like, comment, and subscribe and turn on notifications to hear more true stories that remind us of the quiet power of seeing someone fully.